The primaries are over for France's right. It's in battle formation. Centrist Alain Juppé congratulating the resounding winner of those primaries, François Fillon, who won some 2/3 of the vote. His sober demeanor, a definite winner in these times of unsettling change. But will the rest of the electorate go along with his Thatcherite pledge to take an axe to 500,000 civil service jobs? In a pitch to the working classes, the far-right's Marine Le Pen is all for the welfare state, a clean break with the days when her dad ran the National Front. But some of her original grassroots support may be tempted by Catholic conservative Fillon and his stances on gay marriage, abortion, his rejection of a more multicultural Europe. Then there's the left, where the outgoing president cut short by a few hours a summit to Madagascar after his own prime minister hinted he may run against François Hollande. Unprecedented disarray, say some, and it could all come to a head in the hours and days to come. Where will socialist voters turn in a race where they reject the two front-runners? Today in the France 24 debate, does Fillon have the right stuff? With us to talk about it, well, a man who thinks he does, Pierre Danon, spokesperson for the campaign of François Fillon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks as well to Socialist Party spokesperson Corinne Narassiguin. Welcome back.
Good evening.
And we love visitors in the France 24 debate. Greek economist Yannis Koutsoumidis is not in Chania, Crete, but here in Paris. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter at the hashtag F24debate. The picture much clearer, but only for one side, the right, falling in line behind François Fillon. The battle inside the ruling socialists, whose primaries are scheduled for January, playing out at times this Monday inside the confines of the presidential palace. Haxi Myers-Belkin has more.
On Sunday, François Fillon, the economically liberal and socially conservative former prime minister, became the centre-right's presidential nominee. Up against rival Alain Juppé, Fillon secured 66.5% of votes, a result that the majority of right-wing politicians are happy to get behind.
I think what François Fillon offered compared to Alain Juppé was a conservative party that does not apologize for its values and its ideas. What we need now is to come together.
Polls now predict that the final round of the presidential election in May will see Fillon up against National Front leader Marine Le Pen. The far-right party has reason to be worried that Fillon's Catholic values and anti-immigrant rhetoric will attract traditional National Front voters. Le Pen's party is now fighting to discredit Fillon's economic plans, notably his desire to shrink the French state.
His plan is very harsh. It cannot bring together a majority of French people.
The success of a man known as the French Thatcher has also galvanized many socialists into calling for party unity. On Monday, government spokesman Stéphane Le Foll insisted that President François Hollande and Prime Minister Manuel Valls would not be competing against each other in January's left-wing primary.
I want for us to come together. Not for us, but to try to carry out a project that protects those that now might, quite rightly, feel threatened by François Fillon's proposals.
Fillon has promised to cut 500,000 civil service jobs over the next 5 years and wants to increase working hours across the board. For France, radical proposals that will be put to the test on the 23rd of April.
Let me begin, Pierre Danon, by saying nobody around this table is going to contest that François Fillon ran a great campaign. After all, he wins 2/3 of the vote in the runoff. He surges ahead of everyone, including his former boss, the former president, Nicolas Sarkozy. Great primary campaign, but now can he build a big tent, which is what you need if you're going to win a general election, with his plans to slash public spending, most notably? Isn't that going to be a red flag to a bull to many French people?
Yeah. First of all, you have to know that in France, our public spending is 57% of the GDP. In the average of European Union is 50%, and the Germans are quite near 45%. So what François Fillon wants is just to get back where a lot of other people are, which means actually cutting 100 billion euros, which means leaving the public spend flat over the next 5 years, because that's what it means, cutting 100 billion against the trend. So it's needed, it's very important to do, because if we have too heavy public spending, we have taxes and we have debt. And debt is really a problem for France, and taxes are now a heavy burden on our companies, and it's a handicap to our competitivity. So it's a very much needed reform.
Needed medicine, you say, but will the French go along with it? They like their welfare state.
Yeah, you know, there is a lot of pedagogy needed when you want to reform France. François Fillon is doing that since 3 years. When he started to say that he wanted to push the retirement age at 65, let me remind you that in Germany it's 67, and in the UK also 67. We are at 62. He said that he wanted to push it to 65. 3 years ago, it looked like lunatic in France and very aggressive. Now I think that with explanation, pedagogy, talking to the people, which we have done a lot, it starts to be accepted. So that's what we are trying to do with him, is explain to the people why it's needed. He wrote a book, I think it was 10 years ago, saying that the French people can bear the truth.
That is the big criticism that's leveled against both candidates in the 2012 election. Neither of them confronted the size of the problem. François Hollande will recall on the campaign trail, ran a very left-wing campaign, complained about finance, about banks, but then he did reform, but he didn't do what he promised as a candidate.
I think if you look back, I'm sure we'll have many opportunities in the next few weeks, in the next couple of months, to discuss what we've done since 2012. And if you really look at what François Hollande promised, we did put regulations in place for the financial sector. The idea was never to say that finance is bad in general. We need a financing system.
We all remember that $1 million, that €1 million tax at the beginning of the mandate. That
yes, it was done, and it was taken down by the Constitutional Council. But we did create a new higher tax bracket for the highest revenues. We did do that, and we did put regulations in place in the banking system. We did push the regulations at the European level, and we can always say it wasn't enough, but what we needed was to put in check a very speculative finance and put the financing system back in service of the actual productive economy. And today, we can start to see the results of the economic policy. François Hollande in 2012 ran first and foremost on putting France back on the right track when it comes to the economy, while protecting the social system. And this is this very difficult balance that we've achieved. We've had some misses, it's true, but we've also had a lot of success. And
but there's still, as Pierre Danon was saying, the heavy public debt, and also, of course, the unemployment rate, which is
but we've put the debt increase in check, and we've reduced the deficit very significantly, and we've done that while over the last couple of years redistributing by cutting taxes on the lower classes, and we've strengthened our social system. We've put in more rights. We've increased a lot of the minimum social subventions and subsidies. Yes, exactly. And we've created new rights, especially in the healthcare system.
Yeah, Yann, it's all about perception, isn't it, an election? And what's your perception, seen from the outside? Were you surprised to see that the frontrunner was a man promising to slash 500,000 jobs, something that is unpopular among some, even within the right?
Absolutely, but I think the French right-wing voters decided to go for a man who showed leadership. Fillon showed leadership in the last few weeks, and he was quite convincing in the debates, especially in the TV debates, that he can lead this country in a more prosperous times. Because what Mr. Hollande failed is to show leadership also for Europe. and I think Mr. Fillon has a great opportunity to win in April.
So when you say show leadership, do you mean with his policies or with his demeanor, the way he presents himself?
I think both. France needs more open market policies to regain its strength and its growth and become a steam in the Eurozone again. And on the other hand, people in France, I feel that they need to feel more secure in regards terrorism and in internal security. On the other hand, the very sensitive issues of religion, identity, this will be debated a lot, and I think Mr. Hollande has an issue there to say that it is an open society. France has always been an open society and should not be a closed society. So I see, my opinion is there are good plans by Mr. Fillon to revive the French economy, but there's many debatable issues for his identity and national policies.
A little more than 4 million voted in the primaries of the center and the right. That's a little more than 11% of those who cast ballots in the last presidential election in 2012. After he won Sunday, François Fillon addressed, well, the other 90% of the French.
The left means failure. The far right, bankruptcy. What I'm talking about is beating these political parties, not beating those French people who feel let down. All those voters who may not stand with us today, but it is my duty to bring them with us into the future.
Bring them with us into the future. People right now are afraid of the future, and they're afraid of what they see in the world around them. They're afraid of globalization. And what we're hearing from the candidate Fillon is things like scrapping the wealth tax, trickle-down economics to a certain degree. How are you going to win over all those voters who come from working class and middle class backgrounds, the ones from those lower middle class backgrounds who will decide the election?
But, you know, the center, and you mentioned it a couple of times, so I have to insist on it, the center of François Fillon's program is to defeat unemployment, which Germany and the UK have succeeded to do because they are at 5% and we are at 11%. And we are at 11% since like 30 years. So one of the key elements to defeat employment is to attract investment. You know, in order to have a production economy, you need to have manpower and workforce, but you also need to have capital. And in France, we have so much smashed and pointed to our investors that we don't have investors. In France, you have I did not interrupt you, so let me please finish, and then you will be very happy to listen to you. We have 8,000 business angels in France. There are 80,000 business angels in the UK, which means people investing in small businesses, starting and growing small businesses. That's how you create employment. So I don't think that people mind too much about the few thousand people who are paying wealth tax, as long as we create employment and growth, because that's good for everybody.
Corinne Narassigan?
We do have a problem of investment in France, mostly because the French banks don't really do their job really well when it comes to investing in the actual productive economy, which is why the first measure that François Hollande campaigned on, and it was number one on in his proposals, and one of the first things he did was create the public investment bank, because we understand that there is a problem there. But France is actually one of the countries that attracts the most foreign investments in Europe. So even though it's true that we do have to do even better, we're not doing so badly today. And I think France also is a country where the republic was built on the social contract, and the fact that the state has a very strong responsibility to ensure equality, to ensure equal opportunities for all. And this is why most French people understand the need for very strong public services, which means that, you know, a little bit of a higher taxes, but because it's always the choice. You can choose to pay less taxes, but you will have less social services, less public services. You can make a choice for the kind of job market that you have in the UK or in Germany, but that means lower paying jobs, with partial time jobs, and this is a political choice. It is a very political choice that we want to have good jobs full-time jobs for the French.
When there were labor reforms put in by the current government, even though some of the unions signed on, there were still hundreds of thousands of people in the streets.
Yeah, let me first answer, Madame. In France, we have 90 civil servants for 1,000 citizens. In Germany, they have 50 civil servants for 1,000 citizens. So the difference is 1.6 million civil servants that we have in addition to what the German have. I travel a lot to Germany. I have not noticed that German people were especially unhappy about their public administration. So that's one thing. We really believe that people are tired about listening to always the same kind of language, where 6 million people today in France are looking for a job. 6 million people. Tony Blair was saying that what is social is what gives people jobs. That's what matters. But now, in just answering your question, it is true that there have been a lot of people in the street in the summer. First of all, we really believe that François Hollande had it all wrong in the way he dealt with that law, and that was what attracted a lot of demonstration. May I remind you that in France, when François Fillon did reform the retirement system in 2010 and in 2003, there were millions of people in the street, and nonetheless, the reform went through. And we still have those reforms. If we would not have those reforms, the retirement system in France would be collapsing.
All right, we're gonna pick up on these points when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.